You know when you swirl a glass of wine and you're just hit with all those incredible aromas, that texture, the complex flavors, and you just kind of think, how on earth does that happen? We give a lot of credit to the winemaker, right? The vineyard, the barrel, but the real magic, that true transformation, well, it's happening on a scale you can't even see. Let's get into it. So we see this, right? This gorgeous finished product. But what you're actually looking at is the end of an incredible biological drama. It's a story of life, of death, and of total transformation that takes simple grape juice and turns it into, well, into something so much more. Which really brings us to the biggest question of all. The answer isn't just a person in boots stomping on grapes. Nope. The real winemaker, the true artist behind this whole thing, is actually a huge, diverse cast of living, single-celled organisms. We're talking about yeast. And like any great story, the world of winemaking has its heroes, it's got its villains, and it's got some really interesting specialists too. They're all playing a part in how that final wine turns out. So, what even is yeast? Well, basically, yeasts are these tiny little fungi. They're naturally hanging out on the waxy coating of grapes. That's called the bloom. And their superpower? It's called fermentation. They have this amazing ability to break things down and build new things up. They are, without a doubt, the engine of winemaking. And this is where we meet our main characters. On one side, you have the hero, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is your classic, go-to wine yeast. It's tough, it can handle alcohol, and it's really what builds the fundamental character of a great wine. But on the other side, you have the villain, Brettanomyces, or just Brett for short. Brett is bad news. It's a spoilage yeast that can create these just awful aromas. Think horse sweat or Band-Aids. Yeah, it can totally ruin a wine. But it's not always so black and white, good versus evil. You also have specialists. For instance, some yeasts aren't really interested in making alcohol. Instead, they form this beautiful, delicate veil on the surface of the wine called a flor. And this process is absolutely crucial for creating the unique, nutty, salty flavors you find in certain styles of sherry. They're playing a totally different, but just as important role. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the cast of characters is huge. Scientists have found over 590 species, but only about 15 of them are the real major players in wine. So a huge part of the winemaker's job is really just managing this microscopic drama, making sure the heroes have everything they need to thrive and that the villains are kept out of the picture.
So, how do you make sure your heroes win? Well, you've got to feed them right. Just like any living thing, yeast needs a proper diet to do its job, which brings us to the yeast's nutrition plan.
The single most important thing on the menu for yeast is something called free amino nitrogen, or FAN. Just think of it as the main course. It's the specific type of nitrogen that yeast can actually eat and use to build proteins, grow their population, and power through that long fermentation process. And this is why winemakers are kind of obsessed with numbers. Because if the FAN level in that grape juice drops below 150 milligrams per liter, that's a problem. The yeast population starts to struggle, fermentation can slow to a crawl, or, even worse, stop completely. And then you're just left with a sweet, unfinished, and totally unstable wine. So the winemaker basically becomes a caterer for the yeast. And they can't just dump all the food in at once. It's all about strategic timing. They'll add some nutrients at the very beginning to get things going. Then, about a third of the way through fermentation, right when the yeast population is at its absolute peak and they're getting super hungry again, bam, they add another dose of nutrients to keep the party going strong. And it's not just about the main course either. Yeast needs a whole survival kit. This includes vitamins to help kickstart the process and produce important enzymes. But maybe the coolest thing it needs is something called ergosterol. You can think of it like body armor. It literally strengthens the yeast's cell walls to protect them from the toxic alcohol that they themselves are creating. Pretty wild, right? Okay, so the yeast is happy, it's healthy, it's well-fed. Now it's time for the main event. This is the great transformation, where all the real magic happens. Whoa, okay, don't let this diagram freak you out. We are not going through every step, I promise. This is glycolysis. And all you really need to know is that this is the chemical assembly line inside the yeast cell. Sugar goes in one end, the yeast breaks it down to get energy, and some very, very important things come out the other end. So what comes out of that assembly line? the stuff we love about wine. The number one product, obviously, is ethanol. That's the alcohol. But another super important byproduct is glycerol. Now, this is another type of alcohol, but it doesn't really make the wine feel boozy. Instead, it gives it body and weight and that amazing smooth, rich feeling on your tongue. But sometimes that transformation can go a little sideways. If the yeast gets stressed out or starts to starve, it can produce a nasty compound called hydrogen sulfide, or H2S. And this stuff smells like rotten eggs. Even if there's only a tiny amount, it can completely cover up all the beautiful fruity aromas in a wine. It's a total buzzkill. So, of course, winemakers have a whole toolkit for fighting this funk. They can pick yeast strains that are known to produce less H2S. They make absolutely sure the nutrition is on point. That's the big one. They can also mix in some oxygen or even use special treatments to clean it up if it does appear. It's a constant battle to keep that transformation clean. But here's maybe the most amazing part of this whole story. The yeast's job isn't done when it's finished making alcohol. In fact, some of its most important contributions to the wine happen after it dies. Take a look at this. Grapes have tons of these aromatic compounds, but a lot of them are basically locked up, chained to a sugar molecule. And when they're locked up, you can't smell them. But after fermentation, enzymes released by the dying yeast, these things called glycosidices, act like keys. They go around and unlock these aromas from their sugar chains, releasing this whole new wave of incredible fragrance into the wine as it ages. This whole process is part of something called autolysis. It literally means self-breaking. After the yeast cells die, their walls just start to break down and they release everything that was inside them back into the wine. And this is where we get one of the most important textural elements in all of wine, mannoproteins. So where do these things come from? Well, mannoproteins are a huge part of the yeast's own cell wall. It's what gives them their structure. So when that wall dissolves during autolysis, these complex molecules spill out and start doing some amazing things in the wine. And these are the gifts they leave behind for us. Mannoproteins add body and volume, making the wine feel richer and fuller in your mouth. They actually soften tannins, so the wine feels less bitter, they help keep the color stable, they can stop those little wine crystals from forming, and they even help protect the wine's aromas. So much of what we think of as quality in a wine is literally a gift from the ghosts of yeast. Which really leaves us with this final thought. After you see the unbelievable complexity of what these microorganisms are doing, from creating alcohol and texture to unlocking aromas long after they're gone, you have to ask yourself, is the person we call the winemaker a master artist creating something from nothing? Or are they just a really, really skilled manager creating the perfect environment for their microscopic employees to do the real work? It definitely changes how you look at that next glass of wine, doesn't it?